Good afternoon, children. This is my third video on the lesson Mineral Nutrition in Plants. In the previous video, I have explained the difference between mineral and non-mineral elements, beneficial elements, hydroponics, advantages of hydroponics, disadvantages of hydroponics, and two technical terms, chlorosis, which means yellowing of leaves by chlorophyll loss, and necrosis, which means the tissue death, especially in the leaves, right? And this happens due to deficiency of these elements. Today's new term to understand is mineral toxicity. So what is mineral toxicity? We'll have to go back to this term micronutrient. See, in the first video, I have explained that essential elements are of two types, macro and micronutrients. Macronutrients are called so because they are required in large amount, whereas micronutrients, also called trace elements, they are called so because the requirement by the plant is very less. Now, suppose there's a tree and the micronutrient that is to be provided, the requirement is very less. But for some reason, the micronutrient is given in extra or higher doses. So, do you think this will help the plant? Absolutely not. These extra higher doses, they become poisonous to the plant, and this is what we call as mineral toxicity. So, by definition, higher dose of micronutrients often become toxic. A tissue concentration that reduces the dry matter of tissue by 10% is called critical toxicity level. The second term for today, this part is deficiency symptom or hunger sign. Now, out of the list of these elements, 9 in macronutrients, 8 in micronutrients, suppose the nutrition of a plant goes missing in any of these elements. Suppose one is missing, right? So the plant will start showing some visible signs, right, in external appearance. This is what we call as morphological changes or external changes which are indicative of deficiency of a certain element. They are called deficiency symptoms or hunger signs. That means the plant is hungry for that particular element which is missing, right? The next is critical concentration. Critical means, suppose this is the requirement for nutrition in a plant. Suppose the average rating is 0 to 10 and 5 has to be provided, because below 5, if the nutrition has an element below 5, suppose in deficiency, then this becomes harmful, right? So 5 number is the critical boundary level, that is a must, right? So what is critical concentration? The concentration of an essential element below which plant growth is retarded. That means it goes in a harmful way. This is called as critical concentration. So critical concentration, you can say it's like a fixed boundary line which must be there for a good healthy plant, below which if we provide, this will be an unhealthy plant body or an incomplete nutrition. Then deficient element. Just now I told you what is deficiency symptom. That is an element, if it is missing in the mineral nutrition, right, the plant shows visible signs. So the element which is present below the critical concentration, any element which does not satisfy the minimum critical requirement and it is less than that, is said to be in deficient quantity, and we call this to be less than critical concentration. All right. So these terms should be clear, children. Mineral toxicity, higher dose of micronutrients, deficiency or hunger sign because of an element which is missing in the plant or nutrition, and critical means the minimum that should be provided, below which it is harmful for the plant, and any element which is below the critical requirement is called deficient element. All right. The next topic is nitrogen fixation. Nitrogen, all of us have studied. We know that this is present in the air, the molecular nitrogen. It's a prevalent element in the living organisms next to carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And this is present in air in 78%. It is bonded by triple bond. We write N2 The molecular nitrogen, there are two atoms of nitrogen bonded to each other by a triple bond. Right. Now the question arises, why is nitrogen very important? In plants, we talk of fixation of nitrogen. What is the role of nitrogen? Nitrogen is very important as a component of proteins. You cannot imagine any protein to be made without nitrogen. Nitrogen is also important for the making of amino acids. Amino acids, they are the building blocks of proteins. Then nucleic acids. Which nucleic acids? The DNA and the RNA. You write nitrogen in them, right? Then hormones, then chlorophylls, and many vitamins. So you can see the various very important role that the nitrogen plays in a plant body. Right. Now, the nitrogen that is present in the soil, right? The plants are also present in the soil and there are many microbes also. So plants and microbes, they compete with each other for the available nitrogen, right? So the amount is limited here in the soil. There are plant roots also which require nitrogen. Everyone wants these to be made. Whereas microbes also, the bacteria or the algae or the other fungi, etc. So the plants and microbes, they compete. All right. And in such a way, nitrogen becomes a critical nutrient for both natural and agricultural ecosystems. If we talk of the nitrogen cycle, at page number 12.13, there's a nitrogen cycle given here, right? So what is a nitrogen cycle actually? Nitrogen cycle is nothing but it's a relationship or circulation of nitrogen between three sources or three nitrogen pools. The first is atmospheric nitrogen, the other is soil, and the third is biomass. So the way nitrogen is circulated, cycle means it will be in regular motion, right? So a regular supply of nitrogen in plants is maintained through this cycle. You can see how the arrows they are denoting. So three relations are to be maintained, or three pools you can see here. The first is atmospheric nitrogen, then soil, and the other is the biomass, which could be plant biomass, animal biomass, decaying biomass. All right. So this entire cycle of circulation of nitrogen from one pool to the other is called nitrogen cycle. Then, what is nitrogen fixation? The process of conversion of free nitrogen of the atmosphere into ammonia to make it available for the plants is called nitrogen fixation. Here you can see there is 78% nitrogen. I told you it's very important for the plant, but the plant cannot take it directly, right? So the same has to be fixed into the compound called ammonia, which is a gas here, right? In later reactions, the ammonia will be converted into soluble form, that is ammonium ions, and it will be taken up by the plants. So this conversion of nitrogen to ammonia is called nitrogen fixation. And who does this? This is done by two methods, right? Let us see those two methods. These are physical means and biological means. All right. Physical means, they can be like many steps, but this is not in your course, student. This could be lightning, ultraviolet radiations. See, it's given at page number 12.14, but this is not in your course, student. This can be done by industrial processes, etc. But what is in your course is nitrogen fixation by biological method. All right. So let us start with this biological fixation of nitrogen. Just now I told you what is nitrogen fixation, conversion of nitrogen to ammonia. And when you're talking of biological fixation, then certainly it must be through the living organisms, right? Which living organisms do this? They are certain prokaryotes or the microbes, right? And we call them as nitrogen fixers. And which prokaryotes? Why only prokaryotes? Because for the fixation of nitrogen, there's a very important enzyme that is required. We call nitrogenase, right? And this nitrogenase is present in prokaryotes, in only certain prokaryotes. Therefore, they are capable of converting nitrogen to ammonia. So, which are these nitrogen fixing microbes? They are of two categories, non-symbiotic and symbiotic. Non-symbiotic We can also call them as free living or living freely in the soil, right? Like free living anaerobic nitrogen fixing microbes, rhodospirillum, desulfovibrio, then clostridium. The other category includes free living aerobic nitrogen fixation. See, these were anaerobic and these are aerobic. That means anaerobic, they will be carrying their respiration in the absence of oxygen, whereas aerobic, they certainly need oxygen. And the examples are Azotobacter, Bacillus, Klebsiella. The third category under free living means free living or non-symbiotic nitrogen fixing cyanobacteria. So this is a totally different category of cyanobacteria or the blue-green algae. This includes Anabina, Azolla and Nostoc, right? Then under symbiotic category, there are two subcategories in leguminous plants and in non-leguminous plants. In leguminous plants, the example is Rhizobium, and in non-leguminous plants, this is Azospirillum and Frankia and Beijeringia in sugarcane. Now, according to the current syllabus, children, what you have to study is the blue ticked only the terms that are there, right? As I told you here, the physical fixation of nitrogen, that's physical method, is not in your course, only biological. And under biological fixation, these so many examples are given under non-symbiotic and symbiotic. But under non-symbiotic, what all do you have to study? Three things. This comes under the cyanobacteria category, that is non-symbiotic fixing, nitrogen fixing bacteria, cyanobacteria, Anabina, Azolla and Nostoc, right? Then here what comes in your syllabus is Rhizobium and Azospirillum. So total of 5 things you have to study, right? So this is all for this video. In the next video, I am going to start with the symbiotic nitrogen fixation. So in this video, what have I explained, children? I have explained you only certain technical terms like mineral toxicity, hunger signs, critical concentration, deficient element, and their starting of nitrogen fixation, that why is it important, what are the methods of nitrogen fixation, and who does nitrogen fixation and why. Who does? It's done only by prokaryotes, certain prokaryotes. And why? Because they have an enzyme called nitrogenase, which is a must for nitrogen fixation. So this is the table that I have given, and in my next video I am going to start from symbiotic nitrogen fixation. Thank you.